All right, happy Monday. It is a little past 12:33 by my clock, and I am now on my third take this afternoon, on this PT on Ice. So I'm not sure if anybody will have the chance to join me. It being lunchtime in some places and probably mid-morning in others. Apologies to the group who usually catches this at 8:30 a.m. Unfortunately, I had some connectivity issues this morning, and so I couldn't kind of get it rolling. And then I had a bunch of meetings stacked up, so I couldn't really wait, and I had to push it off till 12:30. So it is 12:30. Today is August 27th. I am Mike Eisenhart, and I'm going to be talking about population health. So let's get started. I always start my clock 15. We're off and rolling. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about the oncoming tidal wave and kind of either riding that wave or getting crushed by it. And I started this story a little bit this morning, and the basics of it are this. I had a nephew in town. He's from out in Washington State, the Seattle area, and so hasn't really spent much time on the East Coast. And of course, my wife and I and our kids, we wanted to make it sort of a rewarding experience, something that he would kind of remember and hopefully wrap up his summer nicely. And so we decided to take him around in the New Jersey, New York area. Went to New York City one night and then went to Central Park and kind of saw some of that. And then yesterday took him down to the Jersey Shore. Now, most folks who know Jersey like secondhand, like TV shows and all that good stuff, have seen the Jersey Shore, but maybe the worst part of it. It's actually not that bad of a place. I'm a little bit of a beach snob, so it's not my favorite place to be. But in general, if you've never been to the beach or you haven't been to the Atlantic Ocean, it's a fun time. So we took him there, and he and my son, who are pretty close in age, they decided they were going to try to go out and go boogie boarding. And it was interesting because, of course, I sort of stand on the shoreline watching them, just keeping an eye on them, because one thing about the Jersey Shore is that the current can be pretty strong, and it can be a scary place if you don't really know what you're doing. And so I always kind of stand there just as an added set of eyes along with the lifeguard, and I was just watching them, and it just kind of dawned on me watching them trying to get out into the water. So you can imagine here are some 12, 13-year-old kids, and they've got their boogie boards in their hands, and they're running out, and they kind of don't know what they're doing, right? So they go out first, and they kind of hit the wave, and the boogie board is up, and I mean, it just absolutely crushes them backward and knocks them over, and they tumble up onto the shore and, kind of like get up, cough out a little bit of salt water, and then decide they're going to try it again, right? And so then the next time they go out there, they understand they've got to kind of jump over that first crest, and then they've got to duck under the next oncoming wave so that they can pop up on the other side, get on the boogie board, and kind of swim out. So as I'm watching this unfold and I'm kind of realizing that they're figuring it out, I'm also kind of in my head thinking about how much we are in very many ways doing the exact same thing when it comes to this get the population healthy, right? So people who have known or have taken the course or sat through any of my lectures, I often talk about the idea that the non-communicable disease problem is kind of like a tidal wave on its way in, right? I mean, it's just this massive, massive wave of disease and despair that are really claiming lives left and right. And that we have to learn how to kind of surf it, right? I wrote an article, about the idea turning the Titanic for the private practice section of the APTA a while back, and kind of alluded to that same basic thing, that we've got to make some turns, we've got to make some changes. We have to figure out how to get over the initial wave, under the next one, so that we can pop out on the other side and actually do good work. So I got to thinking about, what was it? What was the key element? What was one of those things that these guys were trying to deal with that maybe we need to be doing the same thing? And one of those things really was this idea of they are processing information in real time at a rate that really is pretty impressive for a couple of preteen types, right? They're figuring out the rhythm of the ocean. They're figuring out, sort of wave after wave and kind of timing it and understanding and learning as they go. Now, they're learning the hard way in many ways. I mean, they got slapped around a couple of times by some waves and probably drank a little more salt water than they wanted to. But the bottom line is that they learned in real time by information that was coming at them in a very fast and unpredictable way. Now, that in many ways is exactly what we are doing when it comes to this population health piece. And it's been on my mind a lot in the last couple of weeks. And the reason why is because I feel like as a group, as professionals, we need to start to understand that, right? That if you tried to predict the waves of the ocean, if these kids tried to mathematically say, all right, which is going to be the best wave to go on because our formulas tell us that this is going to be the best wave to go on, they would never have left the shore. But instead, what they were able to do, very much like monitoring the trajectory of a baseball, an outfielder catching a ball, was that they were able to sort of do these computational models in their brain very, very quickly and kind of understand, based on real-time feedback, what they needed to do. Now, I think that is one of the most important concepts that we can talk about. And one of the reasons why is because we are now at a point where the data is coming in like waves on a shoreline. So here on my wrist, I'm wearing a sensor band, right? And we've been looking at proactivity over the last couple of months of aggregating data from various streams of information, lifestyle-related data, and taking that information and then being able to actually turn it into something that tells us a story. Now, a couple of things we have to know. One, is it going to be perfect? No. Is it going to give us every bit of information that we want? No. Is it going to be able to be something that we can quickly sit down and say, yeah, like beyond the shadow of a doubt, statistical analysis tells us this is exactly what... No. None of that stuff is going to happen. But that doesn't make it any less of a treasure trove of information. That information, so in this particular case, it can tell me about sleep, and it can tell me about the depth of my sleep, and it can tell me about my movement habits, and it can tell me about my heart rate and my heart rate variability, and it can tell me about how much work that I've been doing throughout the course of the day, my number of minutes, intensity minutes, my floors climbed. All of that information is being collected in a very fast and efficient way. And then if we can collect that information from me and multiple other people, we can actually do something with it. We can begin to, in an intuitive way, predict those waves. We can know that when we see a high wave, we've got to duck under, and when we see a low wave, we can go over. But what we shouldn't do is try to go through with our boogie board standing up. I feel like there's a real metaphor there for those of us who want to be in the population health space. And I think we've got to start to understand this. Because what I've seen and what I find to be, sort of crippling is the other side of the equation. I've seen this, but it's not good enough yet concept. But it's not perfect yet concept. And whereas I agree with that wholeheartedly, I'm going to tell you, if we keep wasting our time for it to be perfect, society and all of the ills of society will pass us by. We will not ride this wave. And to be honest with you, I have a certain fear, I don't want to call it like outright fear, but a concern that we're already behind. Okay, when I see stories that have popped up over Amazon, taking on healthcare, I'm going to tell you, the health professionals and the stature that they have in that conversation is going to decline. And it's going to decline rapidly if we don't start to figure out that information, although not perfect and messy, is critical to just deal with it and move on with the best information we have, go forward and make some other action. Learn from it and go to the next one. Learn from it and go to the next one. Because that's how those folks in real world applied scenarios, that's the decision that's how they make their decisions. Okay? They're not making their decisions based on the depth of scientific knowledge. They're not having the debate about causality, correlation versus causation. They just don't care. They don't care. They say, look, like that's fine. That's an academic argument. Okay, academics and intellectuals, like have that conversation. Go nuts. But over here in the real world, where we have to actually make decisions that are going to influence people and the downstream effect of those, which ultimately is money, like we don't care. We're just going to go with the basic that we know today, and we're going to test something and then retest it again and then retest it again. Okay, to me, that is applied. And that is where the world is rapidly trying to go. Okay, I had a conversation this morning, like literally this morning, one of my meetings was with a conversation with a large health system in New Jersey who is starting to get their brain wrapped around this exact concept. They're starting to realize that, listen, the scientists, although valuable information, and yes, we should never stop that pursuit, we can't wait for it either. Okay, that's sort of the false dichotomy of this whole thing. Yes, absolutely, keep trying to figure out the little tiny nitty gritty. But over here in the real world, we're going to just keep moving forward. Okay, I think that is the oncoming tidal wave, and I think we should be very, very careful as professionals. And the reason why is because if we get too caught up, if we get too stuck, and we keep sort of saying, but it's not perfect yet, the world is going to pass us by. Okay? The information is out there. If you want to know who the greatest purveyors of health information today are, they are not health systems. They are not health professionals. And they are not universities. Okay? They're tech companies. Google, Apple, Amazon. They own more health information, more actionable health information than anyone else out there. Why? Because they own behavioral information. They own information about humans making decisions, about humans doing things. And the minute we figure that out, the minute we start to realize that and we can understand that how humans are making decisions and the patterns of those decisions, which are correlation, okay? We don't have to worry about the causation because we see the pattern that's happening. And when that pattern happens enough times in a row, we can say, yeah, it's likely it's going to happen again. And if we just are willing to do that, then we can actually be in the right spot at the right time. We can catch the wave. So what did I tell my nephew? I said, hey, listen, you want to actually ride one of those waves? Here's the thing you got to know, right? Let me give you a little trick from a guy who's ridden some waves on the Jersey Shore before in his lifetime. You better start kicking way earlier than you think you need to. Why? Because the way waves work is they suck you in just a little bit, and then you go right over the back of it, and you miss the big one. Okay, you have to get ahead of that wave. You have to start kicking hard and get out and create some little bit of lead so that wave now can come up behind you and push you along. Okay, that is so important. Now, this is a 13-year-old. He figured it out. It took him about 3 or 4 more tries, and then he went, I get it. I totally understand. I'm going to go out there, and that information is coming out at me from all angles, okay? Those waves are coming from all angles. They're not slow and perfect. They're not coming in, on a perfect set. They're coming in on angles, and they're coming in. Some are cresting early, and some are not. But what did he figure out? He said, I can wait my time, I can bide my time, and then before that thing goes, I have to start kicking hard like crazy to get on the front end of it. And then the wave will push me along. And then I've got one hell of a ride all the way into the shore. Okay? And when you get a kid who comes up with the delight in his eyes, like absolutely, did you see that, Uncle Mike? Right? And I was totally like, you bet, man, I totally did see that. Because that was an awesome ride. Now, what I'm going to tell you is that awesome ride is available to any clinician who is willing to understand that you cannot wait until you are absolutely positive that it's the perfect wave to go on. Because if you do, you're already over the back of it, okay, or you're going to get crushed by it. But if you can see and say, look, we have enough information to know that it's time to start kicking hard and get out in front of this wave, then you've got your chance to boogie board in. Now, I'm going to tell you, I think datas and sensors are a big deal. You're going to hear more from that. In the next 3 to 4 months, you'll hear more from me on that because we've begun aggregating this stuff and the patterns are pretty clear. And therapists are in a perfect spot to be, sort of actionable there. Okay, you've obviously already heard, 5 elements from me a lot. Move, fuel, recover, endure, connect, and all the little pieces in there. We've got enough, right? Like we don't need any more data to say that exercise improves health or that exercise can reverse disease. We don't. It's enough. Okay, now it's about dosage and timing. We don't need any more data. I mean, and I know this is inflammatory somehow. I don't know. We don't need any more data that says eat more plants is beneficial for your health. We don't need any more. Stop the madness. We know it's beneficial. We know that it works. Now just go forward and actually do it. Okay? We know we don't need any more data that says 6 hours of sleep or up to 8 hours of sleep is good for you. We don't need that anymore. Just do it. Just help people do it. All of that comes into play. So with about 2 minutes and 20 seconds left to play, I think I'm just going to leave it there today. I just want to get us thinking about that. I want to get us kind of thinking about this idea that data in very many ways is the wave. And if we're willing to kind of get in the right position for that wave, we can keep moving and kind of push forward and kind of kick ahead, and the wave will carry us. If we don't, okay, if we're not willing to do that, if we kind of get stuck in this no man's land and the wave kind of catches on us, we're crushed. And I'll tell you right now that I think that's a big possibility. And I think that many of us are going to get crushed by it. Because I think we're so stuck on this idea of perfection that we're not willing to just say, hey, we've got enough. Let's move forward. All right, I'll leave it there. Hopefully that makes some sense. A little bit of a metaphor. If you need to kind of have any inspiration whatsoever, I would tell you, take your kids or your nieces or nephews or whoever to the shore and just watch them. They figure it out real quick. Okay? Observational analysis, they figured it out real quick. All right? They didn't need any kind of interventional study to figure that out. They didn't ask me if I could Google Scholar that stuff. They said, oh, I get it. That stung. I just got crushed by a wave. I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to do something else. And then they did it. And by the end of the day, they rode that wave. Absolutely, Jared. Imperfect action, but action nonetheless. All right, I'm going to leave it there. It's only Monday. Apologize for the late start. Again, I'll be back on my regular time next Monday, assuming Wi-Fi loves me again. But just something to think about, something to dive into, and just to kind of get us thinking about this idea of it's about applied, it's about real world. It's only Monday, halfway through Monday, but still only Monday. Make it count.